Welcome to the Talking Timelines podcast. We are four women with 4 points of view and 4 accents with one common goal: to share insights and information about what's going on in the world from a higher consciousness perspective. No BS, no PC, just lots of ideas that you won't hear on mainstream media. We chat, we laugh, and most of all, we shed and share light. Join us each week as we talk timelines.
Hello everyone, welcome to Talking Timelines 12. And today we're going to be talking about a couple of things. One is information that's come to the front missing from the Bible. And the other one is the Saving Wendy Williams issue. And bear with me on that. You know, I'm not into gossip, guys, but this is important on a level of mental health and about our power being taken away. So I'll be going into that shortly. I've got Susan and Lisa with me today. Unfortunately, Laura was busy. She couldn't make it. Thanks for joining me.
Hello. Great to be here.
As always, it's good to be together. So, yeah, last week, Susan, you sent me a really interesting clip. I can't remember whether it was from Facebook or Instagram about what's missing from the Bible, about Mary Magdalene. Do you just want to share a little bit with the people at home about that?
Well, it was actually an AI question, which was interesting to me. So it came out with this whole explanation about, not that it's contradicting the Bible, but it's adding to things that maybe have been left out or haven't been emphasized much. And it had a lot to do with the women in the Bible, which was interesting to me. And I cannot remember the whole thing. It was just, my mouth was kind of dropped open. Because I do feel like that there are, not that the Bible is not real and that it is not the word of God. That is not what I'm saying, because I believe that wholeheartedly. But I also believe that for a control mechanism for the powers to be, kind of left things out to control humanity, and that's kind of what it was talking about, who Mary Magdalene really was.
Yeah, well, I listened to it. Lisa, did you get a chance to listen to it?
I listened to it about 10 times, actually.
Okay, so I'll let you explain it then.
Yeah, so Mary Magdalene, okay, first of all, anybody that looks at the Bible in its entirety, you have to wonder where the presence of women really is in there, because it's not like, we know that there is such a radiance, a presence, a power with the women. And so why was the Gospel of Mary Magdalene pretty much removed? Well, we're learning that she wasn't just a disciple. She was even she was a teacher that was above even the main apostles. But they depict her as some kind of trollop or prostitute almost. And that's how I grew up with, when I went to catechism and everything. That's how I depicted it at the age of, 10 years old. And for whatever I learned during catechism about the Bible and all these gospels, to me back then, okay, that would have been, I was 10 years old, 1980. I knew just something was off. Something was just off about it. I didn't know at that age what it was. Some of the teachings were just off to me. And now we're finding out that there's so much that has been removed, but the women that are spiritually empowered have been suppressed for a reason. And so that tells us almost everything.
I read a book years ago, I can't remember the exact name of it, but it talked about Divine Mother as Sophia. There is even a book out there saying that Mary Magdalene was married to Jesus Christ. Some people have, said that as well. So all of it's possible at the end of the day. Trying to get to the truth of all these things is difficult as well, because we're picking up on stuff that's in the mass consciousness. So even people that are trying to channel information, unless they're absolutely sure that their energetic filters are clear, and the information that they're picking up from the universe, wherever you want to call it, is correct, because everything exists. So all of the information and all of the stories exist. They're all out there. It's like, which ones are true? Which ones are we tapping into that, are true? And basically, we just need to go with what feels right to us in our hearts. Because one thing I've learned over the last 20 years about this consciousness awakening that's happening on the planet, the spiritual development, call it what you will, is there are many, many different ways to get there. And if people can get to a point where they're in inner peace and love and harmony and kindness and compassion, and they're following a certain religious system, that's up to them. That's their journey. And it's not about people pushing one onto the other, or this is right and that's wrong. But all of this is super interesting. Like you said, Susan, I find it fascinating as well, especially when these people are asking AI, when our AI is, we're told that AI is super intelligent, and that, we expect it to find the correct answers for us when we ask it a question. But where's it? AI's just got access to everything on the internet. How does AI know which one is real and which one is not, which one is true and which one is false? So even there, we have to be careful about what we're listening to. My personal feeling on it is that both Marys were a lot more important as apostles than has been made out. And knowing what I know about the core of creation is feminine. It's a womb in which the plus and minus come together, what people call the divine father, divine mother, come together and create matter, or the holographic simulation that we experience as matter. So really, grace, one, God, is more of the feminine aspect when it comes to creation than the masculine aspect, which is what we've all been brought up with, myself included. I was brought up in the Catholic religion until I was 13, and told my parents I'm not going to church anymore, I'm done. And they were okay with it. They just accepted that I was old enough to make my own decision, thankfully. So I guess what I'm getting at here, guys, is we need to be careful even what we're listening to about what AI is saying out there as well. And that really brought this home to me. None of it's 100%, and everything is just a program in the matrix anyway. So if you don't like the program, you don't need to buy the program. You don't need to go down that route at all. Okay, well, I wanted to touch on that today, but there's another thing that I've mentioned to you both this week, and it's about Wendy Williams. I was never into her show. I've never watched daytime stuff, Oprah, Ellen, Wendy Williams, Kelly and Michael, all that kind of stuff. It never interested me. Most of it I just find boring, gossipy magazine type stuff anyway, and it's not been something that my path has brought me to. But a while back, I seen something pop up that said "Save Wendy Williams," and I thought, "What's that about?" And I flicked onto YouTube just to get what's going on the local news there. And basically, it was saying that she'd been diagnosed with dementia and she'd gone into assisted living. So I thought, "Oh, okay, but why are they trying to save her?" And then this week, I came across a documentary on Tubi called "Saving Wendy," and I thought, I'm going to watch this. And I was shocked. So it was a friend of hers that was interviewing her. She's on the 5th floor in this assisted living place in a room, what sounds like a very basic hotel room. She's not allowed, people can't phone her. She's not allowed visitors. She hasn't been outside. At this point, this was filmed at when the inauguration of Trump was on. She said she'd only been outside twice in a month. And her friend said, well, even prisoners get an hour a day out in sunlight. And basically interviewed her, where the camera was seeing her up at the 5th floor window, and she's at the window with her hand on the window. And it's quite sad because it goes into how she'd made this documentary, and that's on YouTube as well. And it's basically about her life story and how she had become dependent on alcohol. And she also had thyroid problems. So when her eyes were bulging, that was linked to thyroid and stuff like that. And she looked, and I say this not in a judgmental way, a sad character. I felt sad for her in the documentary. She comes across as this really genuine, nice person with a good heart, quite innocent, in fact. And when her husband cheated on her, it really devastated her. She's been raped. She had a couple of miscarriages. The woman's been through a lot. She has been through a lot. Basically, her son apparently was spending her money without her approval, and the bank, Wells Fargo, intervened and managed to get it's even stronger than a guardianship. It's called a conservatorship on Wendy, on her finances, and this is the bit that shocked me, her health. So
Wow.
the bank have taken control of her finances and her health, and have issued a guardian that is now control of everything, who over the last 3 years she said she's seen once a month. She's been in this new facility at the time for 7 or 8 months and not been assessed by a doctor once. She's basically saying that she feels isolated and she's like a prisoner in this place. And her friend was saying they were privy to documents from the court case, and that because one of her catchphrases is, "Do you understand what I'm saying? You know what I'm saying? You understand what I'm
Yes.
saying?" She said it all the time, and she's
Yes,
known for
I
it.
remember.
Yeah,
Mhm.
it's a catchphrase of hers, and people associate it with her and her show. Well, the judge said that is something that somebody with aphasia says, which means you're not really sure if you're in reality or not. I edit this show every week because even we say, you know what I mean?
Yeah. Yeah.
It's just a part of language that a lot of us use. And it's kind of reinstalling that people have listened to what you've said as well when you say it. So she was diagnosed with frontotemporal dementia. Now, she's been in this assisted living for a couple of years. The whole interview, if you go and watch it on Tubi, she was absolutely compos mentis. She wasn't showing any signs of dementia or not aware of what was going on in the world or in her life or anything like that. So the guy got a doctor on and asked the doctor if there is any way that the frontal temporal dementia could have been misdiagnosed when it was really alcohol-induced dementia, because the symptoms are the same. And the doctor said, absolutely. And because she's been in this facility for 2 years, she's clean, she's dry, she's not been drinking, she's not been using any other medications or whatever, apart from she's got lymphedema and thyroid issue, which is obvious by the bulging eyes. I remember my sister used to have that. She had overactive thyroid. So I recognized it straight away when I looked at her. So basically this doctor is saying that it would appear that she's been basically locked up under a guardianship that she's got no control over her money or her life for a misdiagnosis, because now she's clean, she hasn't got any signs of dementia and she's still in this place. So that's what the Saving Wendy Williams on Instagram and so on was all about, trying to get her out of there. Now, the reason I brought this to the show, I'm not into any of the celebrity gossip stuff. It doesn't interest me. It's a whole other timeline of the satanic Hollywood timeline that we touched on in the first episode and all that stuff. But the reason I wanted to share this today was people need to know that a bank can come into your family and take over your finances and become power of attorney over your health and your life by putting a guardian in there. Now, her son is under a court order by the judge to not be able to speak publicly about that, about the situation. Why would a judge do that? There's something very fishy going on with this case.
There's something very fishy, because this is a woman who, I remember she came on like a house on fire when she first came on air. People loved her, what she brought, to the audience. And she was at one time had a net worth of 40 million, which went down to 28 million. And I think right now she's listed at 5 million. But at the same time, it's like something like, and if her son has been spending the money without her knowledge or permission, he probably wants her to stay in there.
Well, the plot
Well,
thickens because, I'm going to bring Susan in now, because until I spoke to Susan last night, I didn't know this. So I'm going to let Susan bring in what she brought into the conversation. And this is why it's even more important that we did a show about it today. So over to you, Susan.
Well, last night Janine was telling me about it, and I said, "Well," I said, I said it may have something to do with Diddy." And she's like, "What?" I go, "Yeah." So, so I did a little bit more research last night, but back in the 90s, Diddy had her fired from a radio station because she had some information about Diddy and she was going to go on air with it. And Diddy was, at that point, he sent so much work or so many clients to the radio station. He told the radio station, "You fire her or I'm pulling all my clients." And so they did fire her. So she's privy to a lot of this bad boy dealings that have been going on in Hollywood, and also what we're hearing about in the Diddy case and what they've been up to and everything. So I said, I said, this may go deeper. Diddy's in jail. He offered up his Miami home, which is worth $48 million. And all these things, his passport, he would wear an ankle bracelet, he would do whatever, but they will not let him out. They will not let him out. He has to stay in jail until he goes to trial. But I was thinking that with the information that she has on Diddy, and they don't want it to, just another witness, who knows? There's a lot of power.
There's a lot of power. Yeah, there is a lot of power there. And I actually did look into that last night when you told me about it, Susan. So what I discovered, because I watched a bit of her documentary on Lifetime, and I think what she was going to release on air was something to do with Diddy was away with people and he had swimming trunks on or something, shorts, and one of his friends came up behind him and pulled his shorts down, and some girls took a photograph of it. So if you miss into, that photograph could have been just guys messing about, or it looked like a gay sex potential was going to happen. And that's what the gossip was going to be. So I did look into what it said that she was going to reveal on him. But either way, it was a very aggressive response to something that they were saying was innocent in the first place, that it was just a couple of guys messing about. So
we kind of heard about this before, about the dropping of pants. And then we're hearing Terrence Howard. He was on just recently, he was on another podcast. I just thought it was a long one. I haven't finished it. And he was saying that in Hollywood, it's all about, I'm not going to lose my man card type thing. And this is just so prevalent. It goes right in line. I shouldn't say beyond. It goes right in line with the casting couch. And so for that success to, that you're part of the club, that's what they're going to do to you. They're going to sodomize you. And for the women, they're going to rape you, or they're going to take what they want to take. And what do they fragment in a person when they do that?
Exactly.
Yeah, many years ago when I first got into this and I read David Icke's books and I did a lot of research into all of that stuff myself and got heavily into that rabbit hole and looked into things that people need to do to move up the higher echelons of the Freemasonry pyramid and things like that. And you're right, rape, murder, stuff like that gets people upgraded to a higher level. It basically they shut down their heart, bring entities in that shut down their heart, and they're given quests to see which ones will do anything to get to where they want to be, and they're the ones at the top of the tree. So they're basically narcissistic psychopaths and things like that, apparently.
Yeah, the more famous you are, the more you'll do.
Yeah, well, I think a lot of them are kind of caught out. They're invited to these certain parties, and then photographs are taken that could be used against them and stuff like that. We've heard about the freak-offs and Diddy stuff and everything else, but this case is different for many reasons. And then on a spiritual level, on a level of consciousness, I started to think about, well, this woman, as nice as she is, has spent decades making a lot of money out of gossip and rumors about other people's lives. And gossip and rumors are frowned upon spiritually. We're not meant to be gossiping about people because it hurts people. Whether it's true or not, it's not the point. Gossip's gossip, and people think, well, it's true, so it's not gossip. Even if it's true, it's still gossip at the end of the day. So I did a video about gossip on my YouTube channel. And basically, when you're gossiping about somebody, anyone you're talking about for 3 seconds or more opens a portal up. And I've already asked for protection today, because when I was meditating, I was like, well, the 3-second rule applies when you're talking about people and you name them for 3 seconds. You've connected your matrix to their matrix, your consciousness to their consciousness. But I asked for this to be a sealed conversation today, because it's not about gossiping about Wendy or Diddy or anyone else. It's about educating the public to the fact that you're living in a reality when a bank can step into your family to have a guardianship placed on you and your finances and your health. And that is wrong.
Yeah, it's scary.
Yeah, people need to know about that. I do not consent to it ever happening to me at any point in my life. People need to be aware of what's going on here, and the fact that this woman has been locked up.
That's interesting, because I know people that are in assisted living or even dementia units, and you still are able to visit them and call them and have contact with them. So just to completely be shut out of your world, that's not how those assisted living places are. Or
Exactly.
dementia. That's not how they operate.
It's not. And then so when you look specifically at what had happened, is she's got a court-ordered guardianship and financial mismanagement, they're calling it. Yeah, but who are they to interject themselves in her life? Right. So like that is really puzzling. So court-ordered, that means it comes from a judge. And also then you have the banks involved. So that kind of says a lot there. My question is, while we're talking about this, is any of her family fighting for her?
Well, actually, a niece was on there, and a niece is lovely. She went to see her, and a niece has got an attorney, a lawyer, as we call them in England, on the case. And I've also got feedback from this doctor now that is saying, because she's shown she's okay now, like she's compos mentis, that it looks like the misdiagnosis from the frontal temporal dementia was incorrect, and it was actually alcohol-induced dementia. And that's another reason I wanted to talk about this on the show today. For anyone at home, when my elderly mother was taken into hospital, she was in her late 70s at the time, with pains in her back. It was her kidneys that were failing. But we went to visit her one day, and the nurses were, "Oh, I'm very sorry, but your mum's got dementia." She was talking gibberish, and she couldn't remember who was who. And I was like, "No, she hasn't." And I was determined, I want to speak to a doctor. And the doctor came, and my mum's got dementia. I'm like, my mum was fine yesterday, and the day before, and last week, and the month before. Dementia doesn't happen overnight.
No.
So I'm not accepting that diagnosis. And it turned out it was a urinary tract infection, which has the same symptoms as dementia. So this is for people at home. If you
say that again, because that is something that I'm sure is quite common out there that people are unaware of.
Yeah. If they take you or somebody that would be considered middle-aged or elderly into hospital and start telling you it's dementia, when they've been okay before, and it doesn't happen overnight, dementia creeps in slowly. That it was a urinary tract infection my mum had that was presenting similar symptoms to dementia. And once they treated the urinary tract, she was back to normal. One thing about my mum, she didn't pass away till she was 92, but she was all there. She didn't lose her mind. Her body her kidneys were what faded in the end, but her mind was all there. And also to take on board, if you've got family members that may be alcoholics or have got, opioid addictions, that if there is alcohol-induced dementia, there very possibly is opioid-induced dementia. These things affect the brain, and they affect the functioning of the brain. So that's another reason I wanted to bring this story here. I'm not about gossiping about celebrities. It's not about that. But I don't think this woman should be where she is. And then I started thinking about, well, maybe this has happened to her for a couple of reasons. Maybe the first reason is so that she could be on TV and go, look, this is what's happened to me, so that we can bring this to the public, that, these banks should not be able to have this power over us. So it's happening for that reason, so that it can be exposed. And then I started to think, well, if you spent a lifetime gossiping about other people and bringing rumors about other people, eventually there's going to be karmic consequence of that. And this may be her karma that has come to her. So it's not a nasty karma that people shoot someone and they get shot, or their child gets shot, or something like that. If you think about the balance of it, it could be the karmic consequences on the harm she's done to all the people she's gossiped about in the past. So that was just my spiritual take on potentially what is going on as well. So having watched what I have watched, a couple of documentaries, and I'm a very intuitive person, picking up on people's sincerity and integrity on the heart level. You can feel it. I think she's a really quite a sweet person, and she's very well liked. Despite the gossip side of it, she seems a very genuine person, and she doesn't deserve what's going on with her now, whether it's karma or not. It's not right to put someone in a position where they're not seeing the outside world and their own families can't phone them up. So thankfully, she has got this wonderful niece who is fighting now and has got a lawyer on board to get her out. And luckily, her friend who did the interview has made a big difference. This show might help one person stand up for their relative that hasn't got that kind of dementia, frontal temporal dementia, that it is something else and it is repairable in that case. Dementia is a really common thing at the moment. Personally, I think some of it's linked into metal toxicity in the brain, parasites in the brain.
And medication.
Medications and lack of fat as well. We need fat. The brain needs fat.
Oh, interesting. I have a business dealing with this lady, so I'm having to go through some of her household. So I have found like 6 medications. She's on 3 different, like one of them Xanax, and then she's on Xanax. She's on 2 different antidepressants. Of course, she's on cholesterol medications because they keep lowering the okay, so I don't know what it is, because I guess it's our food and drug. I don't know if it's a food and drug who handles that, but lowers your cholesterol. They've even lowered it more, but your brain needs cholesterol to function properly. And so we're taking these, oh, your cholesterol is high, we got to get it lower. And then they came in and made the recommendation for the doctors to even lower, which is hurting our elderly.
Well, that's why we're seeing so much rise
Yes.
of dementia. Before it was 1 in 300, and now it's almost like, it was 1 in 12, and I think it's 1 in 3 cancers, same thing. And so I think a lot of it is, as you had mentioned, like with the Xanax, et cetera, antidepressants, you'd be hard pressed to find a room that doesn't have someone that is on antidepressants or anti-anxiety meds. And I think that they are taking its toll on the brain, because like a lot of times, do we see the studies of what it does, or do people even ask the side effects when they get prescribed this?
Yeah. I think the thing about cholesterol, I can't remember the exact figures, but Barbara O'Neill was talking about it. And she said someone went, if you go to your doctors and they say your cholesterol should be on something like 150 or 200 is high, it should actually be on 350 or,
That's right. Yeah.
Right.
So
I saw that.
So cholesterol's not a bad thing. It's not a bad thing. And remember, like going back in the 80s, it was all like fat-free this, fat-free was the thing, and they blamed fat on, weight problems, and then they blamed sugar on it, and it was aspartame and sweeteners were the thing, but they were more toxic than sugar.
Does anyone know where that came from?
No.
I know where it came from. Okay. That came from a decision in Congress by a senator in 1978. And then what we saw in the 80s was that flurry of low fat, non-fat, all of that.
Right.
And so it actually went against the studies of what they did before with different groups like there was one group in Germany, there was another group somewhere else, where they tested like the fat content. And the research was clear that fat was a good thing for the people, but they skewed it. They skewed it so that they can, it's really evil when you look at it.
It is.
What has been done to us, because then you see how, like, and all you have to, and even the people that are naysayers or skeptical, just take a look at pictures of people in the 70s and 80s before this really went on that roller coaster. And then you have Reagan that in 1986 signed that, I don't even know why he did this. He signed that indemnity clause, whereas pharmaceutical companies would get no liability
Yeah.
on what they produced. And then what came in the 90s were all these shots and a huge vaccine schedule. And then we're seeing the ramifications of it today.
Mm-hmm.
Right. When I was a kid, well, probably when any of us were kids, we had 8 vaccines. Well, it's up to right now, kids are getting, by the time they're 18 years old, they're getting 72 vaccines. And that's why the autism rate has grown.
Autism as well is also being, blamed on linked to birth trauma, which we all go through, because women are giving birth on their backs when we should be upright, using gravity to help the baby come down. And when the baby's coming through the birth canal, the inside of the vaginal wall actually massages their body, and it triggers a release, or something happens in the central nervous system that is not happening with the way we're having children at the moment. We're not meant to be lying on our backs giving birth. And I did I think there's 3 or 4 videos in my YouTube channel when I explained all about this further on there. So there's a lot involved in it, and this could be like vaccines with a mixture of the birth trauma and the resetting of the central nervous system needs to be done, because it hasn't happened naturally, which should happen between 6 to 12 months old. So a lot of people that are suffering from autism, they tend to suffer from overstimulations because the nervous system is just on high alert constantly. So they're hyperactive, hypersensitive to their surroundings. Everything's overwhelming, but it's to do with the birth trauma. And it can be helped. It can be reset. People need to realize that. And clearing the metal toxins out of the brain as well.
Yeah, very important. Yeah, but we're starting to see 13-year-olds now with pancreatic cancer. So, obviously, and people, like, they're resistant to us to see their healthcare system change. It needs to change. People can stay with what they want and what they know and what they, whatever their relationship was with their practitioner or doctor. But many of us don't want that. And then furthermore, when we're being faced with some kind of pandemic, he wants to get a shot, you go get a shot. You're free to get it. But if it's forced upon us, they're gonna have a fight.
For sure. Yeah,
Yeah,
absolutely.
a friend of mine was telling me that they're going through. She works for a healthcare company, and she's upper management. She said they're going through massive layoffs. And I said, well, it's going to happen anyway. I said, because the healthcare system is going to change drastically. It's going to take several years. I said, but things are going to change. I said, there are cures for cancer that are coming out. There was a great, I'll send you guys the link, but he was it's called BioShield. And so he did own 2 pharmaceutical companies, and he sold them, and he's a billionaire, but he has spent the last 30 years coming up with a cure for cancer. And it's called T cell injection. It's called BioShield. It goes directly in and just basically obliterates cancer cells. And it's an outpatient procedure, and you have no radiation, no chemotherapy, no losing your hair, no losing weight or anything.
I remember years ago, I read a book. I can't remember the name of the book. And in the very last page, sometimes in the last page of a book, there's a little message. There was a little paragraph in the back of this book about how this person had experimented with cancer cells in a petri dish, and they put serotonin in, and it destroyed the cancer cells completely. And I'd read about this woman who had healed her breast cancer by watching comedy movies every night. And her husband, all they did every evening when he got home was just laugh and laugh and laugh. And it cured her. That's serotonin being produced. So there's lots of different, ways to looking at this. But what I'm pleased about at the moment is there's a lot more people speaking out on social media about how, when you have a biopsy, a tumor grows around the parasite or the poison in your body. The tumor is there to protect the rest of your body from the nasty stuff inside. When you have a biopsy, they poke a hole in it and they release it into your bloodstream, and that's when it metastasizes. Now, I've known about this for a few years, and my friend Janie in England, she's a very clever girl, taught me all this stuff. And now it's coming out mainstream. It's starting to come out that the biopsy is one of the biggest problems. And the other thing is mammograms as well.
Yes.
Mammograms cause more breast cancer, apparently, than not having them.
Well, have you
They're
ladies, first of all, let's ask, who has had a mammogram ever?
never,
I've had one
never.
Yeah.
time. I've had one. Next year, I was going to go have another one. And this was like, I mean, maybe 10 years ago, this first time I had one. And Janine goes, why are you doing that? You're just putting radiation into your body. And I went, oh, dang, I am. I didn't go back.
Yeah.
Yeah, and there's actually countries now, I think it's New Zealand, that now they don't even have, they're not using mammograms for a number of years now. They haven't used mammograms in New Zealand.
And you know, the only reason I did it was because it was free with my insurance. Because if the medical industry is offering you something for free, I mean, that's
Everything, Susan.
like, it's like
That's why
free.
people
No,
get
don't
it.
do it.
You know, but at the same time, okay, let's because we're talking about that. So
Yeah.
they offer the mammograms for free,
Mhm.
but they don't offer to check your veins to see how much plaque is in there and that you've only got 10% or 60% of blood flow.
Right.
They don't take those annual tests, right? And they're fairly simple tests. Then and the other tests that they basically send you out or charge you for, they're the ones that we really need.
Right.
Yeah.
Right. So I no longer get pap tests. Well, I never had a mammogram. I will never get one.
No,
Yeah.
I won't either. We need to be demanding parasite testing from our dog.
Yes.
Yeah,
That's
what I missed.
the
Exactly.
big thing now. It's all about
Yes.
parasites of being the main cause of disease in the body,
Mhm.
and the importance of detoxing. And even like we were having a conversation last week, Lisa, about the ivermectin for
Yeah.
treating parasites.
Yes.
And
And cancer. Yeah.
yeah, and cancer, because it's linked into cancer as well. So there's a lot of information coming out now, the truth about it.
I do want to
Yes.
say one thing. So I listened to this doctor who was he was all for ivermectin, but he also said that the paste. He said if you have skin cancer and you see something coming up, he says you take the paste and rub it on the
Sorry,
spot.
Susan.
Yeah.
Susan, that's the ivermectin paste.
Yes.
Okay, good to know. We should all have that then.
Yes.
Yeah.
Yes. Well, I had a friend, I was telling my friend about it. Actually, someone we went to school with just found out that she has breast cancer. And I was like, oh my gosh, I sent her the article of that gentleman that has the BioShield cancer treatment. But she has skin cancer all the time, constantly. And I told her, I said, oh my gosh, I said, I just listened to this doctor. I said, because she asked me, she goes, what do you think about ivermectin? I said, absolutely. I said that would be my first go-to before I did probably anything. And
Yeah.
then anyway, she told me that she has skin cancer. I said, well, just take the paste. And she said, that makes sense. She goes, I have this cream from the doctor. I said, yeah, it's obviously not working.
No,
Yeah.
yeah, exactly. Yeah.
And
Yeah.
it's about, I think we need to be taught how to be in connection with our own bodies. It's like I've had lumps in both breasts, once when I was 46 and one when I was 48. And that came through, I get visions in dreams about myself, my health, and other people's health. And usually if I dream about you and you've got a problem, you've got a problem, And I tuned into them. So in meditation, I went into the lump and communicated. Remember, everything in your body is consciousness. So you can
Yes.
tap in and you can communicate with it. And I asked, what is the root cause of this lump? And what do I need to do to heal it? And the one in my left breast was grief, and the one in my right was anger.
Yeah.
And so when I dealt with those and worked with my healing myself to deal with the grief and the anger that was in there, mostly from being misunderstood as a child. I was quite a sensitive, clairvoyant little girl and with ginger hair, so I got bullied a bit because of that as well. But once you learn to tap into your body, you can just that 10 minutes when you wake up in the morning when you're half asleep, just really scan through, feel through your body and be communicating with your body. Is there any areas that need and a bit of extra TLC, and just getting to know yourself? We're not taught. We just use this machine and we put deodorants on it that have got aluminum in, and we put stuff in our hair and perfumes and
Brush our
makeup
teeth.
and all this, yeah, teeth and fluoride and all this other garbage into our systems.
Yeah.
And we're not taught how to honor our own physical, mental, emotional, and spiritual bodies. And to me, this should be taught in certainly middle school. By the time you're 13, 14, going through puberty or whatever, it's time to start teaching people about their bodies and about their energy centers and things like that. This is the new worth, I see. Education on an energetic level should be part of the school curriculum so that people understand their bodies and can start taking care of themselves at an earlier age, or at least have the choice, the knowledge base to be able to do that.
And it's about what's in our foods. We keep kind of talking about that.
Okay, well, we can talk about that next week. I think we've just about shared everything we wanted to talk about today, guys. So unless you two have got anything else you want to share?
Just a reminder for everyone that the kingdom of God resides in each and every one of you. Don't need a
Yes.
middleman.
Yeah.
Exactly.
Go direct to source, God, one, whatever it works for you.
Yes.
You don't need anyone in between telling you what to do. Okay,
Yeah.
ladies, thanks very much for joining me today, and we will see you all next time on Talking Timelines. Have a great week. Bye, guys.
Bye, everyone.
Bye. Take care. Until next time.
Disclaimer: the content in this podcast is intended for educational and informational purposes only. The views, opinions, and information shared do not necessarily represent those of the hosts, but is provided for additional perspectives. None of the hosts are medical professionals, so we do not dispense medical advice. Please consult your healthcare professional for any health-related issues. And thank you for listening to Talking Timelines.